Hi, everyone.
Hi. We should be live at least. I mean,
Oh,
so
sweet.
long as everything worked as according to plan. I'm gonna turn the mouse off.
Well, I feel alive. I don't know about you.
I am alive.
Happy Election Day, everyone.
Happy Election Day.
Did you vote, George?
I did vote.
Good.
Chloe Mandell, thank
Hi.
you so much for being here. Guest number 2 of George Mihaly Show. High five. So I'm gonna address 2 things. One. Hold on. I know what I did. I have to go press mute on something real quick.
No problem. George,
Instant rebate.
here's all.
Okay, so we're back. Chloe Mandell.
Welcome back, everyone.
Chloe Mandell is sitting right across from me, and she is an amazing human being. And
Aw.
I'm going to try to give a brief bio about you, and then I'll explain why we're here today. So Chloe Mandell is an event organizer, event director, event planner. She handles all things related to marketing, sponsorship, running the events, day of show, everything that happens before and after. So pretty much the wizard of everything events. And Chloe has worked at the X Games, Winter and Summer X Games, the Olympics in Rio in 2016. She's organized the Portland Boulder Rally, which was the largest single-day bouldering competition and festival in the United States. Has handled all sorts of other sorts of projects and events related to fundraising, nonprofit events, for-profit events, and you've worked with budgets upwards of $250,000. So you're a pretty amazing human being and also an incredibly talented event organizer. And why I'm doing the show, why are you here, is because the idea that I have around the conversations that I'm sharing, such as the one that we are sharing today, is I am a student and whoever's sitting across from me is my teacher. And you are a teacher of many things, but today I think we're going to be kind of focusing our conversation around everything and anything related to events and more specifically experiences created by amazing events. Chloe, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me, George. This is awesome.
Awesome. I'm super stoked. Chloe, I know I kind of gave a quick bio about you, but is there anything missing that you would like to share about who you are and what you do?
I mean, thank you. I feel super honored to be here, and everything you said was so kind. I think a big part of my life that I would add to is just my travels, and it started quite young. When I was 5 years old, I went to, my whole family moved to Kyoto, Japan, and where I attended kindergarten with my sister, and we spent the year as a 5-year-old in this totally foreign country. And that kind of really opened my eyes to the world. And so I've definitely taken that into my adult life as well. I had the chance to study abroad in high school in France, as well as then go back to Japan in college and spend a year there studying abroad my junior year of college. And ever since, yeah, definitely I try and make it a point to do some sort of international trip at least once a year, if not more, as well as, try and really expand my business to be more global and international. So I was just in Europe, for example, for the World Climbing Championships in Innsbruck, Austria. That was amazing. And so yeah, things like that. I think the global aspect of all our lives is really important to remember.
Awesome. Yeah, I really admire how you approach learning about different cultures, but really then immersing yourself in them. Communication and specifically language is kind of like a theme that I'm exploring more now, and a theme that I'd like to explore, continuing to explore with people who I'm having these conversations with. So thank you for bringing that up. And I love what you kind of talked about already, how from your youth or earlier youth, because I think we're still young people, you've been exploring different parts of the world and really exploring ways that you can better communicate with people, because you mentioned you were living in Japan. You were very young at that time, but then you decided to travel abroad there when you were in college, right? Mm-hmm. And you continue to practice your language skills with Japanese, and I know that's also on top of your language skills with French. What is it about those 2 languages in particular that are a little bit unique for an upcoming event in the rock climbing world, which is where you focus a lot of, I think, your time and energy with event planning? Yeah, could you care
Yeah, no,
Explain.
it's funny you should ask, George. Yeah. So yeah, no, I think what George is getting at, which is really exciting, is that climbing has been introduced into the Olympics. It actually just debuted at the Youth Olympics down in Buenos Aires.
This is rock climbing.
Yeah, so rock climbing just was inducted actually in when I was working in Rio. I heard the news that climbing was going to be in the Olympics. They decide well in advance, what new sports they're going to bring on, along with skateboarding, surfing. I think they're just
breakdancing is going to be an exhibition sport as well. So I'm super stoked on.
So I think the point is that the Olympics, the IOC in particular, the International Olympic Committee, is really trying to reach a younger demographic. And so as a result, you get maybe more of these kind of fringe, kind of high energy sports coming in. And so it will then be debuted for the first time at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics, which is it's super exciting. It's kind of, for me personally, it's been just a really awesome kind of connection of all these random interests and hobbies I had sort of lumped into one. Mm-hmm. Like I happened to start climbing when I was living in France. And then I happened to, to go back to Japan. Thank you, family, who got me there in the first place and built my kind of love for Asian culture, especially, the Japanese side of things. And so it's a really neat crossover of, just bringing together my event background. I think that French still being a very common language spoken amongst Europeans, and especially in that international setting, it's a really good skill set. And then Japanese lending itself in particular to the host country and any communication you would need with any sort of host federation, especially. So the way that climbing will work is that like the Olympics, they don't know how to run any one particular sport. And by that, I mean the International Olympic Committee works with these international federations to ensure fairness, to figure out the format, right? And so they're working directly with the International Federation of Sport Climbing, which is the international governing body, kind of like the FIFA of climbing.
Of rock climbing.
Of rock climbing, exactly.
Where, are they based in France, International Federation?
No, they're actually based in Torino, Italy. But there are, members from all over the world, and they work, also with national federations. So I know they're working very closely with the Japanese National Federation to essentially, really do climbing justice and create something that's historically significant and pretty unique. So
that's awesome.
Yeah, so it's exciting for me. I'm not quite in a position where I'm directly contributing, but I've had the chance to really meet a lot of influential people, and I'm just excited for the sport in general.
Really cool. I definitely want to dig more into the 2020 event and more into rock climbing. But before we get too ahead of ourselves, I really wanted to kind of talk about what it is that you do, but really like why you do it. With event planning, with putting together, whether it's a sport competition, whether it's a fundraiser, whether it's a conference, what drives you to do that? Like, why is it that you've really like dedicated a lot of your life towards putting together events for people?
Yeah. I think, it's really important that we ask ourselves kind of why we do what we do. That's kind of at the core. That's what gets you out of bed every day, especially when you're your own boss and, you need kind of that driving force. So that is a really important question to me. And from the very get-go, that was always something I wanted to get really clear. And so it's
your why.
My why, exactly. I mean, you could look at one of the New York Times bestseller books by Simon Sinek called Start With Why. And that's a kind of go-to for many small business owners as far as getting off the ground and really understanding what's their driving force. So for me, it's pretty simple. I just believe in the power of experiences. I think that, we often think of wealth or value in the form of monetary wealth or maybe things and assets. There's just kind of this common notion of wealth. And I'm trying to push that a little bit in that there's just so much value in an experience, right? I bet everyone listening to this can relate to going on a trip and having those memories that they hold with them, going to a family reunion and being just with close, people in a close environment, or meeting brand new people at, say, a community event. So it's that connection you build from experiences. It's those positive memories that really no one can take away from you. Like, sure, there can be like brain damage stuff, but that's much more rare than, say, losing your brand new
iPhone XS10 or
There you go. Or having something stolen, or having, your shed burned down or whatnot. I think that, it's really at the end of the day, when you look back on your life, I think it's those experiences that build the wealth that you carry with you.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I've had many, whether it's festivals or trips that I've taken with friends, or trips to go see family, that I think back on now as being really impactful moments in my life. Things that I think back on that aren't actually things, they're an experience that I had. Like, I remember when I went to go see my grandparents in Slovakia. It's about 5 years ago now. And I didn't know this at the time, but it was the last time that I would see my grandfather alive.
Wow.
It was really crazy. Like, I spent a few days with them, and we really just had a great time sharing meals and conversing in Slovak. And it was just a spur of the moment trip. I was visiting my friend Greg Bandar, who was actually on the previous episode, in Hungary.
Greg, not to interject, but Greg is the reason I'm wearing these fun socks.
Oh, those are
I saw him
cool.
crossing his legs a bunch, so for anyone tuning in on the video.
Yeah.
Got some
Representing that
PDX
Portland
carpet socks. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, that's a really amazing experience that you hold with you dearly. And what's interesting, they actually have done like psychological research, is that experience grows in value over time, right? Kind of if you were to put a monetary value to it, I mean, you can't, it's priceless, right? You can't.
And even sharing the story now, it's like making me feel a lot of the emotions.
Right.
Like, it doesn't feel like it was so long ago, but it was many years ago now.
Thank you for sharing. I mean, that's so special. Yeah. I think everyone really holds those with them.
And it's also, like, I read this on your blog, and it's something that I've thought about before and have heard discussed before also. But it's not just the experience itself happening, whether it's that 1 day or 2 days that you have at a festival or seeing your parents. It's also the time before where you anticipate and you have positive feelings of anticipation, excitement for that event. And then after the fact, like what we were just discussing, like cherishing those moments and then sharing the stories, and again, reliving some parts of that experience. Hopefully it was a positive one, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think you put it best, just that there's so much more than just the event, right? So yeah, before, during, after, it all has a lot that can contribute towards just our overall happiness. And that's, it's really nice to be able to put the skill sets that you've built, or maybe just kind of tend toward, and then be able to use that for the good of humanity in the form of events, which are just fun in and of themselves.
I agree 100%. Yeah. And I wanted to kind of take it back. Like, you already started to talk about a little bit about your childhood, and really how it related to you being exposed to different cultures around the world and traveling. But I also wanted to talk about when you were, I know you say that it wasn't like the events that you were planning, but you still did get a chance to interact with these people. Mikhail Gorbachev, Condoleezza Rice. When were you hanging around those people? Like, what was going on there?
Yeah, no, great question. So, I think like middle school is when my mom started taking me and my sister to it was called, I think, the Women's Voices lecture series. And it was just these really influential women that would come and speak in Portland downtown. And, just kind of being amongst the great women of our time. But then that, expanded to joining the World Affairs Council of Oregon, which puts on the International Speaker Series, which is an annual series that brings in pretty much, kind of the top notable people from across the world of our time. And so, you could add Bono to that list. It was pretty funny. I was holding the door open for him one day, because I was like, so I guess I'm jumping around here real quick, is that I was an intern my junior year of high school, I believe, for the World Affairs Council. And in particular, I was the person with the clipboard in the back kind of green room area for the International Speaker Series, which is really exciting. I'm sure they're just like, oh, young girl, here, stand with clipboard. And it was awesome.
Not the most glamorous sounding job, maybe.
No,
but...
I mean, I think they just liked having someone that was friendly and, you know, yeah. So in any case, it was really exciting because I held the door open for Bono before he went off to talk about amazing things he's doing, especially in regards to Project Red and AIDS in Africa and all the efforts he was really putting into that. And he said in his like perfect accent, he said, "See you later, darling." And I just like, epic. Oh God, I just blushed. And the other thing, if you befriend the photographers at these events, if you kind of just stand behind the person, maybe they don't know you're right there, but the photographer like snapped a picture of me and Bono, quote unquote.
Like a little photo bomb style?
Yeah, total photo bomb.
Were, like the thing.
So in any case, but it was so inspiring. Like I met Condoleezza Rice, just an incredibly intelligent person, you know, no matter right, left, it's just like, it's really amazing to just meet these people that have accomplished so much. And we were the same height. So it's like, you know, you kind of put these people on a pedestal and then you meet them and they're humans too. So people. Yeah,
that's awesome. That's really cool that you at a, you know, I think like at a time in your life, like we're still developing like throughout our entire lives, but maybe like in high school, we're more impressionable and you got some really interesting opportunities to be around like these super powerful or influential human beings, and you understood that they're also just human beings still, right?
Right. I think, I mean, there's the diplomacy too around it, and just, if anything, the world of hospitality, which is to make, you know, they're just about to give a really important lecture. You want to make their lives easy and hospitable, and so yeah, that's always like just being very service oriented has always been something I've kind of just veered towards, and you know. And just being really good on the phones and a good communicator. I think those are skills that definitely apply to nowadays. I remember, I think I was telling you this earlier, but I took a phone call from the White House. And this was in 2004, I guess. So we could do the math. Yeah, exactly.
Just a few years, actually.
Yeah, there you go. And so so I swear I did the correct buttons you need to press to transfer the call. And then my supervisor is like, hey, no one's on the line. And so I had accidentally hung up on the White House. So I can say that, but I don't know if I'm very, that was one of those things that you get to, you know, accidentally do when you're interning for a really awesome organization. But I've learned since then.
That's crazy.
So,
Chloe, I know that like now you are in charge, like one of the events that we actually collaborate on, the Portland Boulder Rally. We've worked on it together for the past 4 years.
Yeah.
How can you think back now, like when you were planning the first one, like where were you and how did it come about that you got put in charge of running a really large rock climbing competition?
Yeah. So the story behind the Portland Boulder Rally is really special because you have Brian Knutson of Next Adventure, co-owner of Next Adventure.
It's an outdoor retail store here in Portland, Oregon, but they also retail online.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And I think they've had
25-year anniversary recently. 26 this
20
year.
Yeah.
Oh, was it 20?
20 year.
20,
yeah.
I thought it was 25. Okay.
But no, I mean, they're amazing. They have multiple locations across the Northwest, and they have a paddle sports center as well. So in any case, you know, you have major business owner meet with other major friend business owner, Andy Coleman of the Circuit Bouldering Gym.
Which was the first only bouldering rock climbing gym in North America?
I don't know. I mean, they opened in 2005, so that was definitely well ahead of the explosion that is climbing now.
Yeah, one of the first bouldering gyms in North America for sure.
It's crazy, to think about. Yeah, and now they're opening their 4th location soon in Bend. So
the Circuit Rock Climbing Gym and Next Adventure are the co-hosts of the Portland Boulder Rally.
Exactly. Yeah. And and it's because, you know, they kind of came together and said, hey, we really want to celebrate the community and find a way to incorporate rock climbing. And so this was 2011. And at the time, I was working front desk at the Circuit Bouldering Gym, just kind of had some various roles here and there, but
really oriented around hospitality though, because the front desk service is the first interaction anybody that comes into the gym has. Right?
Oh, so much fun. Yeah. I mean, you're meeting such awesome people. And so at the time, so when it started, I was part of that original meeting where like, what do we call it? And we came up with like Stumptown this, or like we came up with a bunch of names. Thank God Portland Boulder Rally worked out really well. But we call it the rally sometimes. So in any case, so it wasn't until 2013 when I actually took it over as the event organizer. And that was a really exciting year because we bumped the cash purse up from $5,000 to $10,000. We incorporated a much higher value production live stream, and we went big. It was awesome. So just super exciting to see kind of the response, and that it was something everyone was really looking for. We got, a lot of amazing pro athletes come out from across the country to compete, as well as just, the excitement within the community and the live stream viewership. So it really showed us, that year, it was so popular that we basically were at capacity with that particular venue. So it used to be hosted at the Northeast location of the circuit. And then we moved it to the Tigard location because that was a new gym that had opened that was about 40% larger. So it's now 19,000 square feet. Yeah, exactly. And with an additional 6,000 square foot covered parking area that we convert into the festival, which is just, you couldn't ask for a better venue. So then it was like game on, like sky's the limit when it came to, just what's possible with this event. And it's so fun to see the growth of climbing as a sport, as well as just the interest from kind of anyone, just from kids to adults. I think people are using it as an alternative to a gym. So it's really fun when people and members have a chance to really test their limits with a competition, but then also see and climb next to their heroes. So I could rattle off names. I don't know if it'd mean much to our listeners.
Some of the best bouldering and even rock climbers like in the world, Ashima Shirami, Shirishi, Sean Bailey, Alex Puccio, who everybody knows, Kai Leitner, right? Like these are a lot of these people are going to be in the Olympics in 2020. And a lot of them have competed multiple years at the Portland Boulder Rally.
We're like the gateway really comp.
Cool. Right? I think it's super cool. And so I know like the Portland Boulder Rally, for anybody who doesn't know, it's a climbing event that brings, maybe you can talk about it actually, like how many competitors, but then like the youth competition is also like this huge thing. Like, who comes out to compete at the Portland Boulder Rally, and like why does it really even happen too? That's like the other thing. Yeah.
I mean, just like I was saying, I think there definitely is kind of this excitement around like, okay, let me actually train for something. Like, you could go climb every day, but it's a little bit, it's amazing the impact this has had. There are people who've used the Portland Boulder Rally as kind of this, maybe like milestone to pull them out of, say, health problems they've been having, or get over maybe like a really we've had some really amazing stories that come out of this, but maybe there was a death in the family, and this was kind of just their thing that they put their energy towards. And you'll never know the impact this has on each individual. And sometimes it's fun to read through the captions, say on Instagram, # Portland Boulder Rally, but really it's become something that's bigger than ourselves. So you're looking at 440 technically, 435 to 440 competitors, a third of which are youth. So they compete in a USAC sanctioned, so that's USA Climbing, which is the National Federation of Climbing, sanctioned event that way this local event can count towards their minimum kind of local competition requirements to then head on to the series with divisionals, regionals, etc.
So for children who, I guess like something that maybe people don't know is rock climbing has a governing body within the United States where kids can compete against kids from different areas in the same way that like a basketball team will compete with basketball teams from neighboring towns. Like this is happening now with rock climbing for both bouldering and for is it called sport?
Sport climbing with ropes. Exactly.
So youth is like a big component of the competitors, but then who are the other competitors?
So the other competitors are you or me, or so pretty
citizens,
much citizen comp. Yes, exactly. And so you're looking at again kids as young as say 5 years old, and then we have a masters category in which It's 35 years and older, which is funny because I can't. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to being in the Masters.
Yes, exactly.
category in a few years.
It's low, but you'd think like this sport, it actually does make a difference. So
competition will be steep because the 35 plus year olds are really strong.
Oh my God.
people. Yeah.
It's crazy. So yeah, I think we had, people in their 50s, even 60s competing. And so it's really fun no matter what your level. A third of our competitors are in that what we call recreational or beginner category, even intermediate category. And so it's a pretty even split of where people come from in their climbing background. I think what was really exciting is that Outside Magazine named us one of the top beginner-friendly competitions of any kind. So we're with races and bicycle, races and just amongst all the sports, we were really seen amongst climbing as that super inclusive, just try something new, do something for fun. You'll have a good time. You get a swag kind of goodie bag as well. So we definitely work hard to make it worth everyone's while to compete. And then, it's amazing just the positive feedback and community we're building. And I think it extends, to the live stream viewers. We have an amazing live stream done by Story Firm.
Cool. My video production company.
To George Mihaly and his team. Yeah, totally. So I think that's added a huge element just in that it's, there's unlimited capacity for online viewers. Yeah. So we put a big push into expanding our reach. And
so it's an event that's really put on, of course, like to encourage people to climb more and train. It brings a really like high level of competition for the youth competitors. And then also there's people who come to do what's called setting the routes, which is where you create the puzzle that you see on the wall that somebody climbs. And those are world-class setters that are coming in just to set problems for the open category, which is where the professionals compete.
Yeah.
But there's more to it. I think that's like what sticks out in my mind about the Portland Boulder Rally and seeing it as like an event that kind of embodies really like the style of events that you put on, where it's about more than just people rock climbing, because it brings together so many people from the community to, I don't know, I guess like build the stoke is I guess like a climbing term that you would use, right? But to get together and celebrate like the fact that climbing is a way to bring people together in a positive means. And this year especially was really cool because every year that I know the Portland Boulder Rally has been happening, there's always a raffle that happens where the funds are distributed to various nonprofits. So totally like this awesome altruistic component of the rally. And this year there were some really cool organizations that were involved. So 3 different nonprofits got funds from the fundraiser, you could say. Would that kind of be a way to describe maybe what to you is the motivation for putting on an event like that, where it's not just about like showcasing some of the best rock climbing like that you can see, but it's also about bringing people together to strengthen maybe like friendship bonds and themes around that? Yeah,
I mean, it's a great question. I think different people are going to get something different out of an event. So as the producer, you can put something forward and say, yes, this is why we're doing this, but everyone's going to get their own thing out of it or come for a different reason. So I don't necessarily like to prescribe it. I have a conversation very early on with any client of why are you hosting this event? I think that's, just in the same way I talked about why do I run my business and work in events. I think it's equally important with each event to understand why is the event happening and what are kind of our goals as the organizers and kind of as the client, what are they looking to see out of it? So, it's really fun with the circuit. I think there's a lot of pride within the members that it's like, hey, we have this really big national competition
Which
that
has happened 8 times now.
Yeah.
Next year will be year 9, right?
That's huge. So we're definitely one of the longest running for sure. And it's really fun because each year, I don't know how we do it, but each year gets better and better. And, it's, and you still have, people moving to Portland that have heard of it or they're brand new and they're like, what's this? So about 50% of the competitors are brand new each year. Not necessarily new to climbing, just new to the event, which is really exciting, just constantly getting, spreading that love.
That's awesome.
But yeah, I think that in general, we try our best just to create a really fun experience. And you mentioned that charity component. I always ask my clients whether that's something they want to do, because I think there is this benefit, and it's something that people are looking for nowadays of like, great, what is that next level kind of giving back, or, people really see a lot of value in just like, how are we supporting the community at large? So this year we partnered with 3 awesome organizations, PDX Climbers of Color, Wild Diversity, and Alpenglow Collective. And they all really support and are just actively working towards building that inclusivity and diversity within the outdoor space, especially climbing. So it was really great to work with them and learn a lot when it comes to creating an environment that actually is welcoming to all people. And that's something I took away from this event. I made mistakes, and I think we're just in a time now, especially kind of across all industries, where we need to take a step back and really see what are we doing for all people of all backgrounds and gender identities and races, and just understand better what steps we need to take. And it's certainly a difficult issue to talk about, but it's one that's worth tackling. So that was something that I'm hoping to take into the events that I produce from now on.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, what I really appreciated too about the way that these 3 nonprofits were represented at the event, it wasn't that they were just talked about on the microphone for whoever was running the fundraiser. Like, okay, guys, like, we're going to be giving out our proceeds today from the fundraiser to these 3 awesome organizations. Each one of those organizations was actually present at the event with different sorts of activations, I guess you could call it. So activation meaning like a
activity,
way that activity that the group was hosting at the event to help bring people to their booth wherever they were, and then also allow them to kind of educate the public about them. But there were some really fun things that they were doing. Like, one of the organizations, I don't know if it was Climbers of Color, they had a stool that you had
PDX
to
Climbers of
climb
Color did
up
that.
and over and through, which was like a really fun climbing party trick, as you could say. Like, you could definitely YouTube it, seeing people try to climb through and underneath a chair.
In college, we used to do this with so this was with the stool, but we used to do this with chairs, where the goal is to start sitting, and then you have to go under and over and back to sitting without touching the ground and without tipping the chair in any way. So
it's a super fun balance, strength, coordination practice.
It's a climber trick for sure.
Yeah. That's super fun. Chloe, I know like you kind of talked about it, but the why, is that really like one of the first conversations you have with someone who's talking to you about an event? Is there other things that you, I guess, want to address with people who are thinking about hosting their first event, or they're coming to you and thinking like, hey, Chloe, I've got this amazing idea. I'm going to have a conference, and it's going to be just like this other conference that happened in town, except ours is going to be twice as many people, and we're going to do this every year for the next 3 years, and it's going to grow 2x every year after the first. Like, what are the sorts of things that you talk about with someone like that?
Yeah, I actually have a questionnaire that I always provide. And even before we meet, it helps me kind of come really well equipped to have an initial discussion. And so, yeah, definitely the why I think is so crucial, because I've literally seen events fail if they don't have a really strong kind of foundation around.
What would be an example of like a why that a client would have?
So it could just mean increasing their member base. It could just mean, appreciation, making sure that everyone who has maybe worked with an organization. Yeah, exactly. So there's different, I'm organizing a holiday party where, it's all about appreciation, just making sure that the people who came in touch with that client this year feel valued and have a good time. So something, as beautiful as that, or just, something very concrete where it's like, we're doing a product launch and we want to increase sales by X amount. There's just different people have different ways of looking at it. But I think, it's both understanding that why, also getting really clear on their vision, right? Because a lot of people have these ideas, especially for first year events, which is something that I specialize in, of just like, oh yeah, I went to this conference, I want that for our organization too. And, you have kind of these definitely well-intended ideas in place, but sometimes people just maybe don't know the budget that goes into creating something of that scale, or just kind of what it took to create an event. Like the one maybe they saw that they want to model it off of, which is a great way to start for sure. It gives people a lot of clarity
to have a model or like an
it's not it's not necessary by any means, especially for first year events. You can a big part of even my slogan is turning ideas into experiences, because I think there's something to be said about taking action in the same way you created the George Mihaly show. It's so cool to like, great, I have this idea, I want to create this enriching experience. Awesome. Let's work together, but let's make sure we're really clear on, what's the motivation, what are your goals, and then what's your vision. And then usually I'll kind of pencil out a budget, be it, in super detail where I'm actually sourcing venues, vendors, and then maybe we have to adjust that vision or kind of that entire scope. And also something that I really focus on too is these multi-year events. So I definitely prefer to work with events that aren't just one-offs, because there's a lot to be said around the strategy of growth. Usually a first-year event, it might not be kind of to the scale that you're hoping, but that is absolutely achievable within, the industry standard is 3 to 5 years. So just like a small business, right? You really take off and you kind of prove your worth within that time. I think depending on the model, there's all sorts of revenue models of great, what sort of, money streams are coming in, be it ticket sales, sponsorship, raffle is one option. So we just sort of really talk through just the full scope of the event, as well as, just the timeline. I think I've definitely been approached a little bit last minute by some clients that are very hopeful for something that just needs more time to create. Usually I try not to take projects under 6 months lead time, because you just can't do it justice, know?
What you just mentioned too there, that you get a project last minute. I mean, I'm sure it's common across. I mean, I know it's common in like the video production industry or commercial advertising. I've been on the side of the table where I'm the service provider and it comes to me last minute. I have been involved with helping organize different, mostly conferences, TEDx Mount Hood, TEDx Concordia U Portland, so TED events here in Portland. And even with the event work that I do with video production, I've noticed for myself that there sometimes is this kind of, call it like an inverse correlation with the amount of time left before the event happens and the amount of sleep that I tend to get. Is there anything like that happens with events?
Oh my God, it's so true. I didn't even know what I call it event endurance. I just made that up, but
I like that term.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
so, you do like, and I should add that lead time that I mentioned is for events of the scale that I'm more specialized in. So you're looking at anywhere from 500 to 3,000 people. And then I've worked on much larger projects. So you're looking at, say, 20,000 people at X Games.
Or several million people at Rio.
Yeah, it's interesting. I did look that up. So they had 7.5 million tickets, but I don't think that equates to just because one person.
2016 Olympics.
Yeah, one person can buy a certain number of tickets. But in any case.
So like why you said like the 6-month lead time is so that, I mean, that inverse correlation about sleep and the amount of time left to the event is because there's lots of details. You're a detail specialist. I think that's like really like,
well, no, but okay. Yes. But at the same time, it's also seeing the bigger picture. So it's like constantly zooming in, zooming out, seeing, the details of like, great, what font is in, that promotional material versus like out, like, okay, are all balls in the air and is everyone kind of on their timeline that we had set out? So to answer, going back to your question about sleep, say you produce a single day event. Let's just take the Portland Boulder Rally, for example. It's a full day event. You have nearly, 1,500 people plus to 2,000 people on site. And so huge production just takes enormous amount of energy.
like food and beverage, attendees, competitors.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, you have
sponsors.
a competition coinciding with a festival, coinciding with a live stream, coinciding with like, there's just a lot of layers to it. And so, really fun. I find that some people will be like, oh my God, get me out of here. But I embrace it. So, yeah, maybe, yeah, I got a couple hours of sleep before that, probably my own fault, but there's just so much to think about. In any case, so, you know, you have this single day event and you put all this energy, but then you find yourself working 30 days in Rio, for example, with me. And that's where it became very clear what it actually takes to produce kind of these world-class events. We were averaging, I'd say for the team as an average, maybe like 3 to 5 hours, lucky if we got 5. So maybe like 3 to 4 hours of sleep a night. And then we were expected to be on, like, you know, with sleep deprivation, that can definitely have effects in memory. It can have effects in just overall health and wellness. But you had to, for my particular situation, I was a hospitality manager with Cisco Systems, one of the sponsors and marketing partners is what they call them.
You were at a really cool, your housing was really interesting, right?
It's so funny. Yeah. So, I don't even know if I'm allowed to say this, but basically Rio has a finite amount of 5-star hotels. And it's really important for our guests that they receive the type of hospitality that they're used to. We were receiving, you know, CEOs that were top customers of Cisco, as well as top executives from across the world.
For those of you guys who don't know, Cisco Systems is one of the largest like communication technologies
and networking.
In the world. Yeah.
It was so fun to work with, but yeah, so they brought in a luxury cruise ship from Portugal that they re-outfitted with entire Cisco branding. It was beautifully done. And yeah, that's where the guests stayed, along with it happened, you know, all the Olympic basketball athletes for the US, so both the men's and women's side, were also staying there, which was hilarious because a ship has the shortest doors ever, even for like me, let alone, you know, someone who's like 6'7", 6'8". So it was hilarious. But they all came back with their gold medals, super fun. So there's anecdotes like that. But yeah, getting back on track with the sleep thing, you know, you prove to yourself what you're capable of physically and mentally when you're under that much, you know, you could call it stress. I don't really like that term, but just like that much demand on your body and your mind. And you have to have a smile on your face the whole time. And as well as, you know, just be kind of accountable and in the moment. And it really proved, you never know what you're capable of until you push your own borders and push your own boundaries rather. So be it in a sport, be it at your job. So for my job, it was really amazing to prove to myself that like, oh, cool, I can basically do this where it's like 4 hours of sleep a night and then working 18, 20 plus hour days where you're on and then maybe you have a break. But there was no such thing. Yeah, it was just kind of like, you're just on, and I loved it. And so it was really exciting to know that, great, I have this capacity, which lends itself very well to the event world. But I'm sure there's other industries that require that amount
fortunately,
of energy.
The Olympics happen, once every 2 years, but since you worked on the summer, once every 4. So if that,
it'd be great to join the Winter Olympics.
Again, you know,
if anyone's listening, Winter Olympics, hit me up.
Yeah, shout out. She has experience with Winter X Games, so
yeah, that was
sharing
fun.
Characteristics.
That was cool. I won a snowboard there.
Yeah, you came back with a skateboard too from summer.
Yeah, that too.
Yeah.
Oh my God, so random.
You know, it's interesting because you just talked about, I forget what details specifically, but some of the tools in your toolkit, and I know you're big on lists, like are checklists or anything else that maybe people think are basic, like essential components to your, I don't know, process?
Yeah. So I've been thinking a lot about this, just kind of, you know, keys to success, what makes, because I get a lot of people like, oh, that sounds so much fun.
With so many details to keep track of.
Right. Yeah. So lots of details. But, you know, it's easy to get overwhelmed, I think, for some people, but it's really important to kind of see the forest for the trees, you know, just like one step at a time. And will say I super rely on a team, right? Be it someone that I've worked with closely and I'm subcontracting to bring in, or working with a client's staff members that they might provide me a certain number of hours of their time. And I actually prefer to work in that capacity with the client's staff specifically, because they gain a lot of just ownership of the event and excitement for something that their company is putting on. You know, I'm just usually an outside contractor, and it's really important that usually people don't know if I'm involved unless there's a mistake, right? Which is the good, you know, kind of the way to be. I think going into this profession, one of my mentors, Sean Alcott, was really just wise to tell me, he's like, don't go into events if you're in it for the glory or for the, you know, just even being on this podcast talking about it's really exciting, because most people, don't know what I do, or if they're at an event, they don't know I'm behind it, which is kind of fun. You know, I find reward when other people just, you know, when my clients can just sit back, enjoy their own event. That's why they hired me, right? And people go up to them and say, hey, great event. You know, that makes them feel good. And that's really what I'm working towards. So yeah, there's kind of like, in a way, just that teamwork, I can't emphasize enough, is so important. Just the ability to delegate, but also to support, you know, in the end, the buck stops with you, right? If there's an issue and, you know, it hasn't been resolved, it is on you. So taking that ownership, that utter accountability, but at the same time being flexible, right? I think we can have I've seen some people get really kind of narrowed in on just what something's supposed to be. And knowing that, like, hey, we can adapt to what actually is, be it not as many people are registering as we thought, you know, let's maybe scale back on the venue. Let's look at, you know, our marketing campaign and pivot a little bit. Great. We thought, you know, there'd be a bigger audience through this platform. Maybe we try another one. So just being creative, constantly persistent. I think all these adjectives I've been saying really make a great event planner. And in regards to the details and lists, absolutely. I know there's a lot of event management software out there, but I'm just a big fan of like Google Docs and Sheets.
Yeah.
Like you can't go wrong. Yeah, pen and paper. In the end, I think it's maybe the way I'm wired or whatnot, but you have to think quite systematically in order for there to be linear progression, or just, you know, it's not even linear. It's sort of like everything happening at once across those various aspects you talked about, be it registration, food and beverage, branding, programming, audiovisual. So these are just elements of some types of events, not all. But so you know, it's on you to basically manage. I mean, whatever management means to you. And so yeah, that person to person relationships, really important, because you're asking a lot of some people. And in the same right, having those relationships with sponsors, that's been a huge win for just some clients I've worked with because of the relationships that I've built, and been really grateful to work with such awesome companies, especially in the outdoor industry, who get it, right? They see the value in being a part of these events and contributing towards making those experiences possible. There are some events that just would not happen without sponsorship. So yeah, really, you know, incorporating them and making sure they're well taken care of. That's that hospitality role. But at the same time, you know, just maintaining the standards that you put out. And sometimes it requires some difficult conversations or negotiation around, especially pricing, sourcing. It takes a bit of a you know, kind of strong-willed person to go in and have a plan of attack and really execute. But yeah, being so systems oriented can help, because then right now I'm in a place where I've built just templates essentially for my business, such that I can use them for other events and be quite efficient and bring the knowledge that I learned in one event to the next one. So what's lucky for my clients now is I can bring the skills that I built in Rio at the Olympics to maybe their local fundraiser, maybe their local community event, and they're getting a world-class experience.
That's awesome. You know, you were just kind of talking about it, and even throughout this entire conversation, we've always made, I think, like small references to it, and like this theme around communication and what makes someone an effective communicator. there's so many like little details that I think are easy to overlook. Something as simple as like remembering somebody's name and addressing someone by their name. This maybe is kind of like a little like two-parter, and just kind of wanting to explore maybe your perspective on this. But like, what do you think makes like someone an effective communicator? And what are I know we were just talking about like negotiation and skill sets oriented around hospitality, but like, what are the other sorts of things that you think make an effective event organizer? It's kind of like communication. Yeah.
It's a great question.
For people who are like thinking like, oh, like I'd love to make a career change, or
Right.
I'd love to become an organizer of events.
Totally. I mean, you could argue, this is going to sound strange, so I'm going to throw a curveball in the sense of like, maybe you haven't thought of this, but because you're having to, so communication is absolutely key, right? It's very important to know, status reports, what's happening. Has someone, literally the event planning is communication. You're talking with multitudes of people. I'm going through my contact list. There's like 200 people I touch, get in contact with it in any one year, which is crazy to think about. So, but my curveball is that you actually have to be a fun person, because you're with this person sometimes, like, again, these like long 18-hour plus days, and like, ideally, you're actually enjoying what you're doing and you're having a good time. And honestly, I swear that's how people will hire. Like, if they had a good old time, like in that person, they can keep an even keeled. Like, this is one, it's beyond communication. It's also the ability to just maintain a sense of just calm within the storm. There's a really fun analogy that event planners are like swans.
I love this one.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny. I heard this. I'll give shout out to GMR Marketing, who I worked with in Rio. And so our program manager, Angelique, said, who had put on a banquet for the Queen of England. I mean, just an incredible human being. But I asked her similar questions like, what's the key to your success? I mean, probably not asking like that. But she really did say event planners are like swans, in that we have to be very kind of like beautiful, calm, elegant on the outside. You're often client facing. You're, working with sponsors who've spent anywhere from hundreds to thousands to tens of thousands, millions of dollars to be there. And so very important that you set the tone. The people working around you, the people you're working for, they're all seeing that. So you're setting the tone. And I've even talked to volunteers who seem a little bit frantic or stressed or worried. And I tell them it's really important that you also set the tone. And maybe that means taking a step back. Maybe that means taking a break, or maybe it just means like doing things a slightly slower. And people can wait in line. People love lines. Like, look at Portland brunches. It's crazy. So in any case, being a fun person, being kind of that swan, if you will. So the other part of the analogy is like, on the outside, everything's super beautiful and clean and graceful. And then below the water in the mud, right? You can't see this on audio, but I'm moving my hands really fast, just like you're underneath the water. Because, right, say, there are constantly issues that happen that you can't account for, and you're having to troubleshoot just constantly when it comes to on-site coordination. And so making sure that that's all happening, and definitely, again, that accountability side is that it is on you to make sure that things are going smoothly, but at the same time, doing it in a way that, you're having a good time. It's no one else even knows that it's happening. I have countless examples of just like little fixes. It's like, oh, glad that worked out, kind of on the back end. But,
nobody knows it's a problem unless
nobody
you let them
even
know
knows
there is a problem, right?
Exactly. Yep. So I think that's really important to remember, that, just, I would call it composure, as well as communication, be it phone, email, texting. I even ask anyone I'm working with, I ask the preferred method of communication, because you could even say, oh yeah, no, I'm an email person. Like, just, send me what I need to know. And they're not actually an email person.
What makes a good email person?
For me, good email people are people that actually read their emails, which sounds so standard. And I don't put it against anyone, because there are people that get hundreds of emails in their inbox. So I make it a point to assume that people, maybe just, I don't put it against them if they haven't read an email. But sometimes it is very important that they see information that can only really be relayed, maybe it's a lot of details in spelling or things that are much easier to convey in an email format versus a phone call versus a voicemail versus a text versus I have clients I communicate Facebook Messenger on. Whatever gets through to them and gets a response as fast as possible. Because there are times where, you can plan an event as fast as the person can get back to you. So if you're waiting for a long time, it'll take that much longer, So oftentimes it's providing that sort of like gentle persistence. I've had a lot of people appreciate that. And just that, again, I really make it a point. It's never anyone's fault that they didn't get back to me, but to quote unquote, like help set me up for success, which in turn helps serve them. It's really important that communication be two-way and that, not only is logistical communication being put out there, but as well as feedback, right? If something's not working, be it a communication style or be it just the general, I think a lot of us have assumptions of like, oh, I thought that backdrop was going to be black. You just assume, but maybe they wanted it to be a different branded color or just you name it. I think it's really important. The more we communicate, the more we can avoid those assumptions as well. And then, which generally saves you money and last minute kind of changes. So yeah, I make it a point to just be super clear, super upfront and continue to make sure that I'm meeting, say, be it my clients or a sponsor in a way that they can really communicate. And sometimes it's totally fine. Maybe that's just text messaging.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whatever is effective.
Exactly.
Reminds me of when I was in college, junior year going into senior year, I really wanted this internship. And I was in an entrepreneurship class and there was a really like, there was a guest speaker who came in once and I was like, wow, like that guest speaker, like what he was talking about, like really connected with me and what he's doing with his work sounds amazing. And he had his business was just like 2 towns away from where I was going to school in Vermont. And it gave me a spark. I was like, that's the guy. That's his company. I want to intern with them. And I started an email correspondence with him. This was like in the spring, right? So we were emailing literally back and forth for at least a couple months. It was tricky to know when something was or wasn't going to happen. And we were coming closer to summer break. And I decided like if I didn't get an internship in Vermont where I was going to school, I'd go back to New Jersey. And it was getting close to just like a couple days before I had to kind of make that decision because there was a lease that I would have to figure out how to resolve with the house that I was renting with a couple people. And emailing wasn't really going anywhere. So I was like, all right. Pulled out a button-down shirt from my closet, ironed it because I was in college. I wasn't wearing button-downs that were ironed.
Wow.
It was just me. And found a pair of shoes that looked presentable and decided I'm going to surprise this guy. I'm just going to show up at his business. I was 19 at the time. And I don't know if it was a little bit of just like arrogance or maybe it was like wise thinking at the time. Maybe I think about it as wise thinking now because of what happened. But that's what I did. I ended up driving to his business during regular business hours, was polite, rang the doorbell and introduced myself and, the fact that I was communicating with this guy, Doug. And it just so happened that when I arrived was 5 minutes before he was leaving to go to the airport. But he saw me and he knew who I was. And he instantly was like, hey, like, good to see you. Sorry about the back and forth. I've been super busy. As you can tell, like, I'm about to take off right now for a flight for a client project. But why don't you coordinate with Pam, who was his assistant at the time, and we'll find a time to sit down and talk when I get back. So I said, great. So I coordinated with Pam. We found a time. Fast forward 1 week later, he was back from his trip. We were sitting across from one another having tea. And he proposed the internship that ended up becoming the internship that I had that summer, which was an amazing experience, a great internship. And I only learned about this as I was coming close to the end of the internship and I was working with somebody else who was working with him, who told me like, hey, like, Doug probably didn't tell you this, but do you know why you got this internship? And I was like, no, like, what's the story? And Tamara told me, she's like, hey, do you remember like you came and you just like showed up that one time because, you wanted to get in front of Doug and like talk to him? I'm like, yeah. And she said that really left an impression on him, that you wanted to be, one, like respectful of his business and his, like, you know, himself. But two, you also showed initiative because you understood that the way that you guys were communicating at that time, which was email, wasn't an effective means to get a meeting with Doug, because Doug is a super busy guy who travels a lot. And the fact that you kind of had that gusto, you know, to show up and say like, hey, I'm interested, but I'm still like, you know, wanting to be respectful of your time and place, like really left an impression on him. And that was really cool, like to learn that. And it's still a group I stay in touch with now. And like, I learned a lot from that internship, but bringing it back full circle, it was the process of finding what was his preferred means of communication. You know, email wasn't working. I tried calling, that didn't really go anywhere. But when I showed up, when I had that FaceTime, that's really like what made the impression. So the long tangent around like reinforcing like that idea that finding people's preferred means of communications, effective communications, is really important, especially when you're working in a large team setting.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible story. I think anyone listening to this can definitely benefit from that experience. If you're, say, a college student looking for an internship, that's really awesome, George, that you did that. Yeah. Some things that made me think of was, you know, it's so funny, just like showing up can be like, it seems like the bare minimum. And yet, you know, we're in a time now where I think people are pretty, you know, just consumed by various things that, you know, just that in-person meeting or like a handwritten card, things we kind of think is like maybe like the bare minimum is actually really going above and beyond. So never doubt yourself if you feel inclined. And I want to speak especially to women, kind of pursuing any interest, but especially women in business. You know, we can doubt ourselves, be like, maybe I just shouldn't go, or like, you know, I think there's times where like, you know, it's so impressive what's possible just by asking, you know, and putting it in a way that, you know, obviously you respect the other person's time, but I would argue, you know, oftentimes it's in your best interest to just ask for what you need. That's something that has proven pretty to create some interesting scenarios. I was at the Outdoor Retailer Trade Show, for example, one of the largest outdoor industry shows of in North America, if not the world.
Yeah, in North America,
yeah,
for sure.
Yeah. So it was really exciting. A lot of the networking happens kind of in these after parties, and I was just sitting next to this guy who grabbed a drink next to me, and you know, okay, what do you do? I do events. What do you do? He's like, oh, I run a kayak business. I'm like, cool. You should give me one of your kayaks for a raffle, because I had this fundraising event coming up, and he's like, okay. And so he like gives me his card, and I'm like, okay, that was a fun exchange. Like 2 months later, a kayak shows up. Like, no joke. I can't believe he did it. It was amazing. And so huge shout out. I wish I remembered the name of this kayak company.
So all you got to do sometimes is ask.
Huh? Yeah. Yeah. It was like, you never know. Maybe you get a kayak. So I just wanted to put that out there. But yeah, anytime I'm working with a team of what I call leads, so often delegate, say, registration, in which like, it might not be worth, especially the client's money, but you know, just the time around, little details that can certainly be delegated. For example, customer service with registration, say like someone, you know, lost their ticket or whatnot. So oftentimes maybe I'll have a registration lead or, a food and beverage manager lead. And so with those leads, anytime they find struggle in communication with someone, I always ask like, did you try calling them? Did you try, you know, different methods in response to your story? But just reminding people, or, you know, even like I was just canvassing the other day for Get Out the Vote, and as well as for Governor Kate Brown. And they say to knock twice on a door, because like just that one knock might not do it. But it's that second knock of like, yeah, I'm here, you know, I'd like to talk to you about voting. Yay, election day. So anyway, point is just that little bit of persistence, the right, you know, if we were to break it down, hey, a list, the right communication method, as well as, you know, just being really humble about it and being really, understanding of the other person's situation, you can never assume where they've come from. Maybe they just,
or what happened to them that day.
Yeah, exactly. So I always like to keep that in perspective because, you have to meet someone where they are. And so event planning is so much about human relationships too, and just relations and the ability to talk to a diversity of people, diverse amount of people and a lot of people at once too. So
I want to be respectful of your time because I know in a few minutes you have to break off, but there's two more themes I wanted to touch upon before we split for the day.
Cool.
But I would love to maybe have you back for a round two because there's so many places, so many forests where I think we can get into the trees, and get lost in terms of a figure of speech. But you were just talking about relationships, and you had spoken actually about somebody who fits into this category, but can you talk to me a little bit about where you see the role of mentorship in being an entrepreneur?
Thank you. Yeah. Wow. I would 100% attribute my success not being like, yes, it was my hard work, but having a mentor is so vital in those, especially beginning months, if not year. Huge shout out to Michael Knapp. He's one of my main mentors. He's also part of Entrepreneurs Organization, which is this incredible organization that really is the top kind of business owners of at least Oregon. And they have different chapters nationally. And, so they have a lot of amazing materials for entrepreneurs around building their business and thinking about their business and reflecting and changing and building. And so, as a result, he has all these resources that he really likes giving, kind of passing forward. And so he takes on 3 mentees a year. I'm really grateful to be one of them. And so, he has me, fill out worksheets every time we meet so that there's some, status report around, you could be feeling like, and I've had this happen where you're utterly failing. Maybe, you just have this feeling, but then you look at the numbers, maybe in your revenue, maybe in just different number of leads you got that week or that month. And you're like, oh, actually I'm doing better than I thought. So it's that outside perspective of someone that genuinely cares about your success. To have someone say, I won't let you fail, which is honestly what Mike said to me in the very beginning. He's like, if you're actually into this, in starting your own business, we were connected because I was referred to him by a mutual friend. And he's like, oh yeah, talk to Mike. He does this sort of stuff. And I was like, what? So I knew him in the context of Ultimate Frisbee, which is a whole other story, but he had been an assistant coach for my team. But in any case, it was really interesting to work with him and essentially, you're learning business as you're building one. So it's kind of like building the plane as you're flying it, which I don't know if that's one way to go. Some people go to business school or whatnot. I kind of like this way and even, coming from events from a marketing background, but not an official, taking a test or whatnot. The more I talk to event professionals, at least the ones that I meet, there's a lot of creativity and freedom in this sort of lack of rules and formal education in this, because you learn by doing so much. There's so much valuable, both, skills as well as just even personally how to handle different situations. Case in point, you have a full evacuation of X Games during a flash flood, lightning storm that we anticipated in Austin in 2016. And it went as smooth as it could, and just knowing that, great, you can help facilitate the evacuation of 30,000 people within 10 minutes is really something special, and keep your calm and keep everyone safe. So, yeah, coming back to it, mentor. So I have found just someone where you have that accountability. Because there's oftentimes we're like, yeah, you should write that email. You should follow up with that person, but no one else knows that. So, maybe you let yourself slide a little bit, but having someone where hey, how did that conversation go? If you don't have something to tell them, that doesn't make you feel so good. So, and you shouldn't be doing it for anyone. Your mentor should not be the reason that you're working so hard. You're working so hard because you want to, because you want to build this thing that's hopefully bigger than yourself.
Of a coach on the team that you already
Yeah, good point. So I like that. So it's like, let's do a sports analogy. Like there's so much like track workouts and lifting workouts and training so that, you can be super strong on a field or, on a climbing wall or whatnot.
Chloe has competed in the Ultimate Frisbee National
Championships.
Championships, right?
It's been so fun. It's really nice to have that physical outlet too, along with, I feel like I'm challenged mentally every day. And so it's, that sounded wrong.
In different ways.
Mentally,
yeah.
Great.
We understand where you're going.
So point is that, so there's the sports side, and it's neat to meet people then that have these entrepreneur sides to them. And it's a really lonely process. Like being an entrepreneur, especially when you're, quote unquote, a solopreneur, where it's just you, your friends don't understand what's going on. It's hard to, anyone asks like, hey, how's it going? Like, you don't want to get into the minutia of like, oh, this client said this, or this vendor's this, nobody, do they care? Maybe, but it's just too in the weeds. And so, having a mentor is someone that does care. Maybe, Mike doesn't come from necessarily an event background, but he does understand the nuts and bolts of business, which just translates across the board. So, it's been wonderful to kind of essentially be given these amazing resources such as books like Traction or Start With Why I already talked about, that can give you some building blocks for like, here's what business is, here's how to kind of move forward. And then, it's a constant roller coaster, both emotionally, I think, even financially, and I think it's totally worth it because you're constantly growing, you're constantly learning. And it's really amazing to have the support of mentors or even friends like George, who are there to support you.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I know that like for myself, there's a couple people who in my life I kind of consider mentors. Maybe they don't know it, but I, reach out to them for advice, especially when there's new obstacles or challenges that I'm navigating that I think they've had experience with. I know you kind of like alluded to it, but with regards to finding a mentor, you said you were discussing this with a friend and they suggested Michael. Like any advice for somebody who's wanting to find a mentor, or like what?
Yeah, just think about the people in your life that you look up to. And obviously we can name a lot of people that are celebrities and that we may never meet, but maybe the people in your
authors,
life,
books, or
exactly. So maybe the people in your life that you do know, and you'd be surprised. There's a lot of those. I think especially people maybe who've been there before can be helpful, which usually lends itself to age, but I don't want to it doesn't really matter. It's that person who you trust, you value what they have to say, but I do want to kind of push back on this word advice. So, one thing that Michael, my mentor, really talks about is teaching and what he calls, or it's called the Gestalt method, where it's like you're sharing through stories and experiences that you've had, which may not necessarily translate because advice can be tricky. If I give you advice, George, and it doesn't work out, you might be mad at me. If I give you advice and you don't use it and something doesn't work out, I might be mad at you. So I think it's really important to make sure that we're just sharing our own experiences and seeking someone who, that method has worked really well for me. You see, look, I'm using it. It's not advice to anyone, but that method has worked really well for me.
I like perspective.
Yeah. And so, I strongly believe it doesn't have to necessarily be someone in your industry. I have several mentors though. I mentioned Sean Alcott earlier. He is in the events industry.
He's worked several Olympics, right?
He's worked, I think 20 plus Olympics, and has been in events for a very long time. And so it's awesome to learn the nuts and bolts of very, detailed event work with him. I even hired him once as my assistant to essentially teach me as I went, when I was in a new position, just starting off my company, but one event. It was, so I think, my personal formula that has worked well is finding someone that can support you on the business side. I know, especially for women, there's a lot of resources out there, be it through the government or just kind of
Mercy Corps, like here in Portland.
They're really cool.
Like women's
I've taken
groups.
Cool. Yeah. I've taken a couple classes there. Mercy Corps Northwest, just to clarify. but it's like the Small Business Association.
Oregon Entrepreneurs Network.
Yeah.
I've heard really good things.
There you go.
about, yeah.
Yeah. So just doing a quick little research, you'll find just a lot of amazing resources out there. Some that I haven't even taken advantage of that I'm sure I could benefit from. So, but you can expand that far if you're having trouble thinking of someone within your current network that you think like, hey, you believe in me, here's something I want to do, like, and have a plan and make sure that it is consistent. I was meeting once a week, for the first, I'd say 5 months with Mike.
So
and
was that
now,
like at a coffee shop or?
It was at his office.
tea?
Yeah. But yeah, you can
meet
meet anywhere. You can meet at a coffee shop, at your house. I mean, whatever you're comfortable with.
phone call even.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's that, again, that accountability that just making it a part of the growing process that, it's pretty remarkable to look back on these worksheets, for example, and be like, wow, look how far I've come. It's really cool to track that, but you don't need a worksheet. You can, just whatever style you feel can support you. I think that, entrepreneurship, it's so crazy. It's such this like difficult journey. Anyone you talk to who has their own business, I'm sure has a story. And unfortunately, there's like this whole like rags to riches, American dream, societal pressure of like, oh, we must succeed. But what does that look like? I think it's not necessarily the like, oh, and then you have this huge fancy office and all these million employees, it could just mean, you're doing exactly the events you want to do, or your business is thriving in other ways. And so I've found a really great model, again, to really lean on my clients' staff, for, again, ownership on their part and support. And then it saves my clients money, so yeah, I've kept it pretty lean, but it works out really well in the end. So
that's awesome. I think those are really valuable perspectives, especially mentorship. And then, just kind of sharing perspective regarding what it's like to run your own business.
Yeah.
Yeah. One last
Cool.
thought before you break off. What's your relationship in the sphere of event organizing with fear? How do you use it, or what does that look like for you?
Yeah. I think that I related a lot to climbing. I'm super scared of heights, which is funny because people know that I climb or people who know me know I climb all the time. It doesn't mean I'm not scared of heights. It's just that I'm at a point now where I know that that's a natural survival bodily reaction, or let's just say mental reaction, but you don't let it take over the physical. And then you slowly build control over even the mental side of it. So, or psychological side. So fear is something that happens when we push our comfort zones, right? So you're now producing an event that's larger than you've ever done before. You're now going to another country where, you don't know the language, but you're put in this position that you have to do something with. There's so many, just think about the time when you felt uncomfortable, and it's kind of that get comfortable being uncomfortable. You'll hear that a lot in the entrepreneur land. And so fear is a totally natural response, but I don't know, for anyone who's seen Free Solo, for example, the Alex Honnold kind of documentary about his ropeless climb up El Capitan in Yosemite,
climbing 2,000 meters.
Yeah,
with no
crazy.
rope, yeah.
So he's the epitome of not letting fear take over, right? So I'm not saying I'm about to free solo anything. I have no desire to, but I think it's a very clear example of, almost using that fear as a propeller of like, great, the reason I'm scared is because like I haven't done this before, but look, I have the opportunity, so continue to put yourself in those positions where, yeah, you're going to expand, you're going to grow, and you surprise yourself so much when it's like, oh yeah, I didn't know I could work 30 days straight, on little to no sleep and produce, and help, on a team of 50 people from across the world, put on
the biggest sporting events in the world.
I'm talking about Rio. It's like, you surprise yourself, and think of that reward. I'm sure everyone can relate to that fact of when they climbing, maybe they got a new grade that they didn't think was possible in the difficulty scale, or maybe you're a runner and you got a new PR for best time. Like every time we kind of meet the challenge, I think we then start to wonder, what's next? So I'm in a place right now where it's like, okay, cool. I've been really blessed to have these amazing opportunities and accomplishments. And it's like, okay, what's next? Like use that fear as a motivator, because if you're not, I don't know, I'm that type of person where it's like you constantly pushing yourself for what's next, what's great, what can be achieved, and really what experiences can we create for other people, because the sky's the limit on the creativity and that that kind of just outside of the norm experience. Like everyone goes around their day-to-day life, you could literally do the same thing every day for the whole year, but an event hopefully should be something special, should be something that's memorable, and it should be something that really kind of that makes an impact. And so it's fun to know that, I don't want just my own fear to limit, the amazing community that I could impact. So if anything, I do it for other people as well.
Beautiful. Like one of my favorite teachers, Ido Portal, said, like, fear, like identify it and go towards it. And you as something that I really admire about you is you really embody that, whether it's, competing in the Frisbee National Championships, whether it's working in Rio at the Olympics, whether it's working Winter X Games, which is like super cold, and then Summer X Games where there's lightning storms, or something else. It's like you're really athletic. You went to Arizona to run a trail running
Ragnar.
ultra marathon.
No, Ragnar's really cool. It's a 24-hour race. You're on a team, and our team won in the women's division.
Yeah, that was your first competition trail running?
Yeah, it was my first ever running race.
Yeah. So fear,
trail running race.
Use it as your fuel. I want to leave it at that. But before we go, I want people to know where they can find you. So where can people find you?
Oh, cool. Definitely love it if you guys, if you have an Instagram account, it's just at Mandell Experiences. So man is man, Dell like the computer, 2 L's for luck. And then experiences. And so at Mandell Experiences on Instagram is awesome. I'm also on Facebook. Feel free to DM, direct message me through Instagram if you have any questions after this.
MandellExperiences.com as well.
MandellExperiences.com is my website. Definitely check it out for again, it really encompasses values, services, testimonials. You'll find a lot of fun stuff on there on my
blog posts too.
blog. Yeah, I'm working on one for you. There's one coming up soon. But George, I wanted to thank you with a gift.
But I also wanted to say you're based here in Portland, Oregon, but you organize events worldwide. And if anybody has any connections with Tokyo Olympics, Chloe Mandell is available for hire. How would you say something in Japanese to honor any viewers who are joining us today from abroad?
Just arigatou gozaimashita.
Arigatou gozaimasu.
Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you for listening. This has been so much fun. I'm really proud of you. It's super fun to be on here.
Thank you. Honored to have you on.
Yeah. And then just want to honor you with a little gift. So
little omiyagi.
Omiyagi. Well, that technically just from travels, omiyages, cool. But this is just small present.
Oh, that is awesome.
So
for anybody who's listening, Chloe just pulled out an amazing, beautifully signed, but also color poster from the Portland Boulder Rally 2018, which is the event that we collaborated on a few months ago. Yeah. Or a few weeks ago now.
So this is signed by all the pro athletes who came out for this year's Portland Boulder Rally. George, thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Chloe. Truly appreciate you and appreciate our friendship.
And thank you everyone for tuning in. This has been awesome.
Excellent.
Share the love. And out.
Bye. Appreciate you guys. Let me turn it off over there.
That was great, George.